Welcome back, everybody. This is PSN, and I'm your host, Artie Decker, and we're going to roll right into week 9. We're going to talk a lot about the playoff positioning. This is pretty much do or die at this point. You got to go ahead and cement your spot if you're going to get in. Basically, next week it's going to be all about the tiebreak process. So, this is your last week to really make that statement that you deserve to be one of those top 4 teams. Looking in here to you got 6A Pinson going into Carver. Look for Pinson to come off the bye week, maybe a little more healthy, and to roll over top of Carver. Looking on, we have key matchup between Mortimer Jordan and Hayden. If Hayden can win this ball game, they could get a potential share of the number one spot. But it's probably not going to happen. Mortimer Jordan is just too good and should win this ball game probably quite easily. Same way this other matchup, you got St. Clair County going into Winona. If St. Clair can win this game, they would take the number 2 spot. But look for the Dragons to go ahead and get the win and be just a little too strong for them. Looking on, we have Locust Fork going into Fultondale. Fultondale just trying to just cement themselves as number 1 and look for them to roll over top of Locust Fork, which should drop Locust Fork to about 3rd, I believe, as they probably are pretty much in, but this would help tremendously in the positioning wise. They would have a shot at number 2, but just don't look for it to happen. Fultondale should roll in this one. Cleveland, Cold Springs. Cleveland just trying to hold serve. Look for them to win quite easily in this one. You got Celigent rolling into Lamar County. Both teams really good records. This is a de facto Region 8 game. And, you know, both teams, as I say, on paper look really good. But Celigent, to me, is just a little bit better, a little more battle tested. Their only loss was to Winfield, which is a 4A school, headed to the playoffs. So look for Celigent to win this ball game and win the region outright. Looking on, we have Bob Jones going into Buckhorn. Bob Jones just trying to hold serve and should do so against Buckhorn. Looking on, we have Hewitt Trustful, James Clemens. Hewitt Trustful should roll in this one and hold serve as well. Huntsville, Gadsden City, nothing really to play for, but look for Gadsden City to win this ball game and not really better themselves, being number 4. We have Mountain Brook Huffman. Mountain Brook's trying to hang on to number 3 in that region. Huffman's played pretty well over the last few weeks, so this would not be a bit of a surprise to see Huffman pull the upset. But Mountain Brook's had a really good year quietly, and look for them to go ahead and win this ball game in a close one. Oak Mountain going into Spain Park, Braxton Barker. This year, just a play or two here and there. I mean, let's just say if they would have beat Hoover, they would have had a really good shot of winning the region. But now, they've lost to them, lost to Tagliova and Thompson. So now all of a sudden, and also took that upset loss, which is huge, back in maybe week 5, week 6, somewhere along those lines to Mountain Brook. So now all of a sudden, this really good team is going to be number 4, which is just hard to believe. But look for them to go ahead and win this ball game probably quite easily. Looking on, number 1, Central Phoenix City, Prattville. Central Phoenix should roll in that one. Sparkman, Grissom. Definitely going to take Sparkman in that one. The big matchup, as we spoke of just a few seconds ago, Tagliova and his Thompson Warriors at number 3 in the state rolling into the Met to take on number 2, Hoover Bucks. This is a fantastic game on paper, and I believe it'll live up to it. Thompson will give them all they want, but look for Coach Niblett and company to be just a little more seasoned and find a way to get the win. Like I say, Tagliova, I believe he'll get his numbers, but it's just The one thing that really worries me about Thompson is their defense, and look for Parker and company to take advantage of that and get the win in this de facto region title game. Looking on, we have Athens and Austin. I believe Athens could really help themselves if they could find a way to win this ball game, but it's just not going to happen. They're still looking to be 3 or 4 going into the playoffs, though. And Austin, of course, number one in the state, just looking to continue their great season. BC Reign, Spanish Forts, just trying to solidify their region title officially. Um, Looking on, we have Brewer and Coleman. Coleman needs a win at this point. They're looking at probably number 3, maybe number 4 if they lose this game. So they definitely have got to get a win if they want to continue to control their own destiny. Columbia, Hartselle. Hartselle, believe it or not, is out of the picture. They literally cannot make the playoffs, which is just hard to believe to me. Always a very dominant program. Decatur, Muscle Shoals. Decatur, once again, another one of those teams always really good, but they're out of the playoffs at this point. Muscle Shoals coming off a very disappointing loss to Austin, 42-14. Look for them to pound on Decatur and to solidify number 2 for them. We have Fort Payne going into Pell City. Fort Payne coming off a heartbreaking, very disappointing loss to Dale Pruitt and his Aggies last week. And now all of a sudden, they went from number 3 to on the outside looking in. And that's just how quick it can happen when you don't control your own destiny. Now they're going to have to rely on the fact that Southside may be upsetting Albertville, and now they have to win going down to Pell City. Pell City's a really good team. They're I don't think they're up to the level of Oxford, but they're not that far behind them, honestly. Fort Payne's really going to have to play well if they're going to win this game, but look for Pell City to win this game and unfortunately put the Cats out of the picture. Park Crossing going into Clay Chalkville. This is 7 versus 8. Big matchup. Look for Clay Chalkville to just barely, somehow, some way, squeak by them. Although Park Crossing is a really good team. Wouldn't surprise me at all if it didn't go the other way. Um, Looking on, we got, as we spoke of earlier, Southside going into Albertville. Southside really is playing well. You know, they give Coleman all they wanted last week, 42-40. Very good performance for them after having such a really rotten start to their season. Uh, so this is going to be interesting. If they can find some way to knock off Albertville, it could cause just a mess as far as that 3rd and 4th spot go in that region. But look for Dale and company to get it done. Just it's kind of like that backs against the wall mentality they had last week. He found a way to get a win over Fort Payne on the road. Look for them to do the same in this game. Probably not going to be a blowout, but look for the Aggies to win it. You got Wetumpka number 9 going into Ben Russell number 6. This is going to be a great game, but look for Ben Russell to win it and to continue their great season. Looking on, we have let's look at Crossville going into Alexandria. The Valley Cubs, uh, probably not as done as well as they would have hoped. But they've gotten what they could out of this season. I wasn't really high on them coming into this year. I've said from the beginning, I thought they were maybe a little overrated, being in the top 5. I thought maybe they were more along the lines of a 10, maybe a 9 team at best. But look for them to beat Crossville. Crossville could win this game and clinch a playoff spot, but I don't believe it's going to happen. Alexandria is going to beat them, but just hold on, Crossville fans. When we go through the other game, it'll make sense to you. But I do like the Valley Cubs to go ahead and get the win and just basically cement their third spot in that region. Douglas going into Boaz. Douglas just is hapless and can't win for losing at this point. And Boaz is a team that's just building week by week, piece by piece. But they're in a tough region and they're taking a beating right and left. But look for them to get a little bit of a redemption this week and beat Douglas in this one. Looking on, we have Gunnersville going into Arab. Arab, coming off a win over Douglas. I mean, it is what it is. And then Gunnersville just is Gunnersville. This game's probably going to get ugly. Look for Gunnersville to win quite easily in this one. Looking on, we have. Let's look at that game. That's what I was talking about with Cross playoff hopes. Uh, Basically, this game determines whether or not Crossville gets in. If Scottsboro can find a way to win it, um, it would make things interesting. But it's not going to happen. They're going into Atala, Etowah. It's just not going to happen. Etowah is just too good. That two-headed monster in the backfield, just too much. Blue Devils quite easily in this one, and it will clinch Crossville as that fourth spot and going into the playoffs. And I believe they would be going to Pinson Valley. Yeah, congratulations, Crossville. You're going to be playing one of the best teams in the state. Looking on, we have Anniston and Aniana. Look for Anniston to win this game, even though Aniana's playing pretty well right now. Looking on, we got Cherokee County at Jacksonville. Jacksonville is trying to win this game and potentially have a share of the region title, but we'll see how that all unfolds. Look for them to beat Cherokee County, which will push Cherokee County to the fourth spot. Still playoff bound, but just not really what they were looking for coming into this year. Looking on, we have Madison Academy going into DAR. Madison Academy is still trying to find a way to potentially win that region, and they're going to have to do it by beating the Patriots, and I believe they'll do it as the Patriots are now eliminated, unfortunately for them. So they're just looking to play spoiler at this point. We got number 2 Rogers rolling into number 4 Wilson. This is a huge showdown, de facto region title game there in 4A. Um, both have beaten a good little Deschler team in back-to-back weeks. Look for this to be a really low-scoring game, and because both defenses are fantastic. But look for the Pirates to go ahead and get the win and continue their great season and beat Wilson. As we was talking about with Jacksonville, Jacksonville is probably a huge, huge, huge Oaks Bluff fan in that, because if they can find a way to somehow, some way beat this red hot Sacs team, this is, I believe, a 7 versus 8 matchup, if not an 8 versus 9. Huge, huge game. I've went back and forth 50 times basically picking this game. Some days it's Sacs, some days it's Oaks Bluff. I've said all season, I love this Oaks Bluff team. Darian Meads, Landon Johnson, just so many good skill players on that team. But as a whole, Sacs really is playing well. And I'm going to ride the hot hand, and I'm going to say Sacs wins this game and wins the region outright, which would ultimately push Jacksonville to number 2. And all of a sudden, Oaks Bluff would be on the road at number 3. Looking on, we got Sardis going into Randolph. Sardis is playing for the region title. If they can go into Randolph and get a win, they will win the region title, and which is a fantastic accomplishment considering who all is in that region. But look for them to do it. Gaskin, just a one-man wrecking ball, and should get the win in this one. Looking on, West Limestone, Deschler. Deschler should solidify their third spot. And I believe they'll slip by West Limestone in this one. Westminster going into Madison County. All of a sudden, Madison County is looking like number 3 coming out of that region. And you think about all the kids. They got the kid going to Tennessee. Then you got another kid going to LSU, being Provens and Flint. Just so much talent on this team, but unfortunately, they could not stay healthy throughout the year, and it's hurt them periodically uh, here and there, cost them some wins. If this team was healthy, I think they would probably have won this region quite easily, honestly. But injuries are what they are, and we can't control that. But look for them to beat Westminster and go ahead and solidify that third spot. Looking on, we have Clark County going into T.R. Miller. This is a big game because Clark County actually upset Mobile Christian last week, which I believe pushed Mobile Christian to potentially number 3 in their region, which is hard to believe considering at a pretty good bit of this season they've been number 1 in the state. So I mean, all of a sudden, you know, sky's falling for them at this point. T.R. Miller is playing pretty well, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Clark County win this ball game. But I'm going to go with the veteran. I'm going to say T.R. Miller goes ahead and gets the win in this one, keeping their uh, region title hopes alive. Um, Looking on, we got Geraldine going into North Sand. This is a huge, huge game. Anyway, being for third place. I mean, you could potentially you're playing for the right to go to Wadawi, as to opposed to going to the two-time defending champs, Field of Champions. You might say, well, it's like picking between a knife and a gun. Basically, yeah. But look for Landon Green to play really well. This Geraldine defense has struggled pretty much all season long for the most part. Look for them to go ahead and exploit that. I mean, the Bison really are throwing the ball well over the last 3 to 4 weeks, especially after Sylvania. And honestly, they found something. They added the little zone read look. I think it really opened up things for them. But Austin Hill has had 3 or 4 straight games with over 100 yards receiving, which is pretty much unheard of in high school football. So look for them to go ahead and be a little too much for Geraldine and solidify that third spot. And on a side note, there's a lot of rumors rolling around that potentially Sylvania might have played an ineligible kid, and if that is found to be true, this could be a really, really big game because of the winner all of a sudden could be hosting Ohatchee as opposed to going to Wadawi to play Randolph County. So, we'll see how that all pans out, but I do like the Bison to get the win in Higbee. Um, in a potential blowout, I think a lot of people are picking Geraldine simply off the premise of how they played against Sylvania a few weeks ago, but I felt like Sylvania might have been looking ahead because of Plainview, so I kind of chalked that up to that. I'm telling you, people think I'm crazy for picking North Sand Mountain, but don't be surprised if the Bison don't roll in this one. We've got Glencoe going into Ohatchee. As we said, nothing really can change here, but look for Ohatchee to go ahead and get the win and be rolling into the playoffs. Pennington and Susan Moore. If Susan Moore could find a way to get the win, they could get number 2, but it's just probably not going to happen. Pennington's too strong. Quarterback really playing well, and look for them to get the win in this one. We got Lauderdale County going into Colbert County. Colbert County, believe it or not, is your number 4 in that region at the moment, and same way with Lauderdale County, they're looking at number 3. These two teams usually are playing each other for the region title, so we're on weird circumstance with these two teams. But look for Lauderdale County to get the win, bounce back after a disappointing loss to Covert Heights last week. Looking on, let's look at Oakman and American Christian. This is a game for the number 2 spot in that South region. Look for American Christian to get the win and push Oakman to 3. Plainview going to New Hope. Look for Plainview to roll and officially win the region in that one. Pleasant Valley going into Weaver. Pleasant Valley is a sneaky little team. They've had their moments this year, but look for Weaver to go ahead and get the win. Randolph County going to the Welborn. That's going to be a long night for Welborn, I do believe. Randolph County is just on a roll, and at the greatest of times. We've got Sylvania going into Brindley Mountain. Sylvania coming off a disappointing loss to Plainview last week, looking to bounce back. They should do it quite easily and probably put a little stank on it and take out their frustrations on Brindley. Or we're going to see a sleepwalking Ram team that's hung over from losing last week. But either way, I do like the Rams to win. Speaking of teams that lost last week, you got Aliceville rolling into Billingsley. Aliceville actually lost a really good Greene County team last week. So, I mean, no shame in that. But look for them to get the win. I know it hurt them in the rankings. I believe they dropped out. I could be wrong on that. We'll look at that a little later. Asbury going into Sandrock. That's what it is. Sandrock should roll in that one. This is an interesting game. Tanner could make the playoffs after such a nightmare season they've had if they could find a way to knock off Faulkville. As to where if Faulkville wins this ball game, they could have a potential region title on the line. But I do like Faulkville to go ahead and get the win. But hold on, Rattler fans. Even if you lose tonight, if West End can knock off Winston County, then you've got a three-way tie for the fourth spot, and Tanner could still somehow, some way be in the playoffs. So that's the bright side at this point for Coach Belser and his Rattlers. Looking on, we got Gaston going into five. That should get ugly quite quickly as the Red Devils should roll. This is a game I've really got my eye on. You got Lafayette, number 3, rolling into number 2, Lynette. These two teams don't like each other. There were fights last year. Suspensions had to be had. You know, these two teams just don't like each other. These two schools just don't like each other. But look for Coach Story and company to make a statement and to possibly win this thing in a blowout. Just to put a little fuel to the fire, basically, of this rivalry. We've got let's look at Ramburn and Vincent. This is another interesting game because if Ramburn can win this ball game, we could have a three-way tie for the fourth spot coming out of that region. I believe region 5 and 2A. So that's going to be interesting. I believe Ramburn will do it, and we will have chaos for that fourth spot. We've said all year we thought Section and Collinsville this game would be for the fourth spot. Well, it hasn't turned out that way. Westbrook kind of spoiled that for us. So this game is just for pride. Look for Caleb Jones and company to keep on really moving the ball and be a little too much for Section and get the win in this one. We've got, as we spoke of earlier, West End going into Winston County. If the Patriots can somehow, some way get the win, which I believe they can, uh, even after such a disappointing season, they could be right back in the playoffs for the second time in a row, which would be a huge accomplishment for them. Winston County, not a real great team. So, like I say, I think the door is wide open for this thing. Uh, if I don't know. For some reason, I've got this feeling that West End's going to find a way to get the win and cause chaos in that region. We got Westbrook going into Ider. A lot of people have picked Westbrook for some reason. Give me Tinker and company. They really are playing well offensively, and I know Westbrook's pretty good on defense themselves, but look for the old Hornets to get the win. A lot of people are picking Westbrook, but I like Ider in this one, and that will solidify number 3, and that'll push Westbrook to 4. So basically the same scenario as the Northside and Geraldine game. We've got, and as we found out, we'll, obviously be playing either Lamar County or Sullivan, however those games turn out. We've got Appalachian going into Raglan. Raglan is trying to wrap up number 3 with this win, and I believe they'll get it. Looking on The big matchup. Everybody from Cedar Bluff has been talking about this matchup for weeks upon weeks upon weeks. I know it's been a disappointing season and all this other stuff. They've held Ivory Star out for a while. They, to my understanding, have gotten Isaiah Jones back over the last 2 or 3 weeks, just on and off. Look for everybody to show up that can, being both of them. I think you'll see Ivory Star this week. We haven't seen him since, I believe, the very first game at Higdon where he got hurt. I think they've saved him all season. Look for him to be back. Look for them to feed him the football and be too much for Coach Howard and his Panthers. It's going to be close, but look for them to find a way to get the win, just like last year. I believe it was 29-24. It's pretty much same situation, but look for McWhorter and his Tigers to win yet another region title. We've got Donahoe and Wadley. Look for Wadley to roll over them and continue to be undefeated. We've got Maplesville and Lochapoka. Maplesville should roll in this one. We've got Woodville and Coosa Christian. The winner takes 3, loser takes 4. Woodville kind of surprised us last week by knocking off Valley Head, which I thought would win that game last week. But it's going to be tough. They kind of had the same situation as Cedar Bluff has this week. They're starting to get some kids back. They got some kids back last week, and that helped them get the win. Of course, obviously, Valley Head lost their quarterback, which was huge for them, and putting them at a huge disadvantage as they lost that huge game. You got Coosa Christian. Uh, at times they look like they might be ready to take that step, and then others they haven't. Obviously, these two teams are in, but it's just a matter of where you want to go. Do you want to go to Hackleburg or do you want to go to Cherokee? Loser will go to Hackleburg. Uh, like I say, I've wrestled to this pick as well, but look for Coosa to actually find a way to pull this thing out and take that third spot. We're going to look on to, Smith Station and Ramsey. Ramsey's had a very disappointing year, but look for them to win this game and continue to be number 3. Looking here at the polls, nothing really has changed in 7A. Pretty much, literally nothing has changed. Spain Park at 11, that might be a little different. Looking on to 6A, pretty much nothing has changed in this one either. Maybe Opelika actually slipped back in at number 10 as Sydney Lanier lost that game last week, dropping to 11. Shades Valley chiming in quietly at number 15. Muscle Shoals at 16. Etowah there at number 5. St. Paul, lost the game to Viger last week. Probably lost the region title to Viger as well, and they dropped to number 6 as Carroll moves up to number 2 in that one. Gunnersville at number 9. Mortimer Jordan chiming in at 12. Alexandria at 11. Nothing really changing there. Well, actually, St. Clair County dropped out of the top 10 to about, we're going to call it 17. Looking on, as we talked about earlier, Rogers with their big matchup at number 2. You've got, as we said, 7 versus 8. Something's got to give there. Leeds drops to number 9 as they lost to Tallahassee last week, who moved up to number 6. Madison Academy still sneaking around the chicken coop, trying to find a way to break back in the top 10 at number 12. You got Deschler at 14. Looking on to 3A, Piedmont still number 1. Gordo rolls to number 2, and all of a sudden has 2 first place votes. Somebody's really digging Gordo. I picked them last year to get to the final. They let me down. I believe I picked them the year before that to get to the final. They let me down. I'm kind of in that same boat this year, potentially. Maybe they'll finally fulfill what I believe they should have. Reno County sneaking up the board, playing great at number 3, Fultondale. Kind of my dark horse. Keep an eye on them come playoff time at 4. Jason Jones, sight to be seen. If you haven't seen him, look him up. Plainview moves up to number 6. I mean, that was a they really played well defensively. At best, I've seen them play all year, really, and did just enough on offense, as we talked about last week. Bailey Dukes making a play here and there, being the difference in the game. Hatchet 7, Mobile Christian, as we talked about, kind of on a bad trend right now. As they drop to number 8, Clark County sneaks in at number 9 for the first time. Sylvania drops to number 12. Weaver at 14. Covert Heights moves up to 15 quietly at 8-1. T.R. Miller lost last week, and they dropped to 16. Number 2A, Lynette gets another first place vote. There's 3. Sneaking up the board there, trying to nip at Fife's heels. Goshen, first time since 1969 they've been ranked this high, so that's a fantastic thing for them. As we talked about earlier, 2 versus 3, something's got to give. St. Luke's never been ranked this high at number 5. Sulligent, first time since 1990, and a team you really need to keep your eye on. I'm telling you, nobody talks about them much, but that's a good little team at number 6. Thorsby, another quiet little team at number 11. Aliceville, as we talked about earlier, lost to a bigger classification for the second time in their season. I believe both those schools were 3A schools, and both are competing for their region title, being Gordo and Greene County this week, as they have now lost 3 games and chime in at 12. Sandrock goes to 13. Cleveland at 14. Tarrant at 15. Lamar County there at, we're going to call it 17, and Faulkner at 18. Looking on to 1A, you got Maysville still holding strong at number 1, Wadley at number 5. Lynn with a big win continues their great season at number 6. Addison at 10. Hackleburg winning their region title at 11. Spring Garden at 13, looking to win their region title over Cedar Bluff. And South Lamar chiming in at about 16. Looking back to last week, there weren't really anybody great to pick as far as a team of the week, but I guess one that kind of stuck out to me that we picked against was Sardis, actually. Were able to come back. I believe it was 14-7 in that game at halftime, thereabouts, somewhere in that ballpark. And they came back and actually beat a really good Madison County team. So they are our team of the week from last week. Congratulations to them. I'm sure Gaskin had a great game and led his Lions to a win, and probably going to set up a region title for them. That pretty much wraps us up. As we talked about after this week, we're probably going to know everything except for tie breaks, and we'll go through that next week. Everybody be safe. Have a great weekend. Bundle up. It's going to be a little cold, and just enjoy it as the chaos ensues. I'm your host, Artie Decker, as always, and I'm signing off for PSN. Save me a spot on the fence, and we'll be back with you next week. Good Lord willing. Goodbye.